And welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every week looking at new topics and meeting interesting people. And today we got a guy, he's not been on The Verdict before. I can't believe that. We should have had this guy on years ago.
Well, I know it. I apologize for that. and
blaming you,
and to him.
Trying to build up momentum here.
Well, we've finally gotten over the fact that he's a Nebraska Cornhusker.
Maybe that's why we were so slow to put him on.
When they were just beating us every year, I didn't dare ask him to come on. Roger Beverage, the executive director of the Oklahoma Bankers Association, is going to be on with us, and we're going to be talking about what's going on at the bank. Financial services that the banks are offering are kind of bleeding off into other industries, and other industry services banks want to get involved in, and it's causing some excitement, some opportunities, and sometimes some tension.
There is a lot going on in that industry.
It's as volatile an industry right now, in good ways, as I've seen it in many, many years.
Well, we'll get to it. Roger Beverage is here with the Oklahoma Bankers Association. Stay tuned. You're watching The Verdict.
For Chesapeake Energy, every day is game day. A chance to outperform the field and win again. Winning consistently demands the kind of leadership we see in the Hornets' Chris Paul, a champion whose respect for the game and his team has produced one of pro basketball's brightest new stars. At Chesapeake, we know leadership starts with a generous heart as well as the will to win. It's taking responsibility for more than personal success. It's building teams that perform as one. In natural gas exploration, winning demands leaders who develop strong teams in the company and in the community. And always, the purpose of victory is prosperity for our fellow citizens and our communities. We've learned each win is earned as a team, and Chris Paul proves it every time he plays. Chesapeake, American Energy wins the day.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. What if someone you meet online sends a message that makes you feel uncomfortable? Tell a parent or teacher right now. It's the safe way for kids, right, gang?
Right. Be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
Just keep it. Thank you. Dr. Kessler? What's up with the pizzas?
Well, I just got my first satellite bill, and those extra fees were a bit of a shocker. So I had to take a second job.
Hey, this was supposed to be pepperoni, dillweed.
Hey, it's Dr. Dillweed to you.
Whatever.
Kids. It's cool. I'm a people person.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get all your entertainment without the hidden charges from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
We're very pleased today to have Roger Beverage, the president and CEO, not executive director, as I said in the first segment. He's the president and CEO of the Oklahoma Bankers Association and has been in that position since 1988. We stole Roger from Nebraska. He did his undergraduate and law work at the University of Nebraska and was the director of the Nebraska Department of Banking and Finance, as well as the executive vice president of the Nebraska Bankers Association before he came to Oklahoma. He's a lawyer with 30 years experience in the practice of law. He's also a teacher. He's on the faculty of the Graduate School of Banking at the University of Wisconsin. And as Mick lamented, this is his first visit, but I know it won't be his last. Roger, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you, Ken.
All right, Roger, tell us about the Oklahoma Bankers Association. Just in general, what is it, what does it do, and why does it exist?
We are in our 110th year of serving Oklahoma's commercial banks. We do a number of different kinds of things, but our primary mission is to serve as an advocate for the industry. We're lobbyists, in other words. We are both in Washington and Oklahoma City on the legislative and on the regulatory front. Another feature of membership in the association has to do with fraud. We have a fraud division, and we go out among banks, to banks, their customers and their employees, to try and teach people and bankers about some of the fraud scams that are going on today. They're very pervasive, as I'm sure you know. And we try to teach bankers what to look for when it comes to a counterfeit check, for example, what to be aware of when something looks too good to be true. We provide services to bank customers and try and keep them aware of what's going on and why they really didn't win the Canadian lottery, and there isn't going to be an armored truck pull up at their home at midnight to deliver the cash. You'd be amazed at how many people will fall for those kinds of scams. We also do education and training. We'll run probably 60 different kinds of programs every year, and we'll have 4,000 to 5,000 Oklahoma bankers take our courses and try to get up to speed on what's new in their area of the bank. We do legal and compliance services. We have 2 lawyers on staff who are very specialized and knowledgeable about banking specific questions. And that's a service that we provide to banks that banks are taking advantage of, probably 3,000 to 4,000 inquiries a year just on technical stuff, how to do this, what not to do in that situation. We also do public relations and communications. And then we try to leverage the buying power of the group, of the banking industry, to get better deals on things than perhaps they can get on their own, like health insurance or insurance for the bank itself, bonds and directors and officers and property and casualty. That's the essence of what we do. We're a staff of 20, and as I said, we've been in existence since 1897. This is our 110th year.
Let me talk to you a little bit about the banking industry. In the past 30 years or so, more banks now or fewer banks?
Fewer bank charters, more bank locations.
That's what I wanted to get to. More spots in Oklahoma for someone to go to do their banking, even though there are fewer banks.
That's correct. The whole idea is trying to get to the consumers when it's convenient for the consumer, not for the banker. The old adage of banking used to be a 3, 6, and 3 business. You know, you take money in at 3, you loan it out at 6, you're on the golf course by 3. That was a long time ago. That's not today's business. Today's business is highly competitive, not just with the other banks as it used to be, but with a number of different financial services providers, some of which have advantages and some of which are competing on the same level playing field as commercial banks.
How has the ATM affected the banking business?
Well, it's been another cost center, but it's been added as a customer convenience. Banks locate those machines where they think they will be the most helpful and the most profitable if non-customers are using them, and that's something that has grown over time. Convenience stores are also in that business, 7-Eleven in Oklahoma City, for example, but they're all hooked into the payment system, and that's good for consumers, and that's really what's driving a lot of branch locations, ATM decisions, that sort of thing.
2007 legislative session getting geared up. What initiatives do you have out at the Capitol this year that you're trying to push?
Well, we have one that's caused a little stir, and that has to do with trying to get for state chartered banks the same rights and authorities that exist for other banks in other states.
Can I interrupt you and ask you to take a step back? We have state chartered banks, and then we have federally chartered banks.
Right, they're called national banks.
Yes, and your initiative is only dealing with state banks.
That's all we can affect in Oklahoma. National banks are governed by the National Bank Act, and they're governed by and regulated by the Comptroller of the Currency.
Excuse me for interrupting. Go ahead.
No problem. The numbers shake out to be about 2/3 of the banks in Oklahoma are state chartered, and about 1/3 are national banks. State chartered banks are regulated by our state banking department, which I have to tell you is probably the finest state banking department in the nation. Mick Thompson and his crew do a superb job, and I can say that because I've been there. I've done what he does. I've supervised what he and his staff look at, and our state banking department is among the best state agencies, and certainly the best state banking department in the country. But the larger banks, Bank of Oklahoma, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, those are national banks. Normally, there are Bank First, I think, is our largest state-chartered bank. Normally, those are smaller banks.
And legislative initiatives beyond that, anything specific?
Well, as I indicated, we're trying to get to the ability of banks to offer other products and services that banks in other states can offer.
I see.
And
give me an example.
An example is real estate brokerage and management. That's the one that's caught a lot of fire. And what we're suggesting is that banks ought to be able to offer that first step to the consumer through a real estate brokerage transaction and provide the subsequent services that are associated with or allied with the purchase of a home. Realtors will argue that that's mixing banking and commerce, and that's really where the difference between the two sides lies. We firmly believe that the process of selling a home is probably the biggest, or buying a home is probably the biggest financial transaction in which most people engage in their lifetime. It certainly is for me. And it's not like going to the grocery store or to Macy's or someplace that specializes in consumer retail goods, where you walk in, you buy something, and you pay for it with a cash or debit or credit card or a check. You don't do that when you buy a house. There's a third party that's involved in that, and that party is the financing entity, whether it's the bank or the secondary market or whatever it might be. And so that's basically been our argument with the realtors. They offer financial services to home buyers, and we're saying that if it's okay for them to offer financial services to buyers of homes, then it's okay for financial services providers to offer the brokerage service to their customers. What's really at stake is who gets the first attempt to attract the customer and to do business with that customer. And right now, banks are getting cut out of that middle, if you will, because the realtors have been successful in prohibiting banks from offering these services. Now, it's important, I think, for consumers to understand who benefits if bankers get this power. The consumer is the one that gets the benefit.
Let me jump in and get us to a break. Roger Beverage, Oklahoma Bankers Association. We'll be right back with more of The Verdict.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB, and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You need this one to get satellite HD. This one's your DVR. This one's for local channels. This one's...
What are we supposed to do with all this stuff?
Got you covered. Oh, by the way, that old satellite stuff makes a great end cable.
That doesn't look so bad, right, honey?
Don't live in satellite denial. Get the latest entertainment without the hassles from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. That's why your parents and teachers set clear rules, when to go online and how to protect yourself on the internet. It's the safe way for kids, right, gang?
Right, be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
We are back on The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers with Roger Beverage. He's in charge of the Oklahoma Bankers Association. In our last segment, we discussed the banking industry and how it applied to real estate transactions and your efforts in that area. How would the consumer be better off if the Bankers Association got the legislation that they wanted?
In a couple of ways. The first benefit to the consumer is a reduction in the amount they pay for the brokerage service that is really at the heart of this matter. Some 30 different states authorize this authority for state chartered banks today, and what we've seen in these other states is a different way in some instances to charge for that service. It's a legitimate service, no question about it, but if you have 10,000 real estate brokers that all charge the same thing, the consumer really doesn't get much of a benefit out of that. What we've seen happen in other states is real estate commissions focused on the hours worked, the price of the home, the location of the home, or in some cases, commissions as low as 1%. That's a good deal for Oklahoma consumers. Why would you do that? Because you want to get the consumer's business and you want to have that relationship with the consumer, and that's what real estate brokerage will enable banks to do. Now, will banks go out and do this on a de novo basis? I mean, start up something new? Of course not. They'll work with their local realtors as a source to have that expertise that's necessary to make it viable. But in the end, it's the Oklahoma consumer that will benefit from this power.
The argument is that the banks are running a risk of spreading themselves too thin, that they're taking this realtor activity would take them away from their principal purpose for which they were formed. How do you respond to that?
Well, in a couple of ways. One is that any application or any authority that a bank would choose under this new authority would be subjected to the approval of the state banking department or the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in the case of a national bank. Assuming that we can get that through, the first and only thing the banking department's going to look at is whether in this specific instance, for this bank, given its circumstances, it's something that makes sense, that it's not going to adversely affect the safety and soundness of the institution. A second point is that it would not be conducted in the bank structure itself. It would be conducted through a separate subsidiary with its own capital and its own governance structure. The third thing about it is that it would be overseen not just by the banking department, but in the case of real estate brokerage by the real estate appropriate folks, in the case of insurance by the state insurance department and Kim Holland. We already have an agreement in place with Commissioner Holland and the banking department governing how banks can enter the insurance business. So we are very conscious of making certain that the legislation would provide that banks take on new activities only with the approval of the necessary and appropriate regulatory authorities.
Well, you're already the most regulated industry that
Absolutely.
there is in Oklahoma. This would add another layer of regulation.
It would.
I guess you're not adverse to that.
No, we're kind of used to it, as a matter of fact.
Would the real estate services offered by the banks through this subsidiary be offered by people who have become licensed realtors?
Absolutely. That's a requirement of contained in our bill. There are several requirements, but two I think are important for realtors to understand. This isn't a threat to their pocketbook. The only way a bank could get into it is through a separate subsidiary with a fully licensed broker, and the only way they can get into it, given those circumstances, is to acquire an existing brokerage firm, not start it on a de novo or brand new basis. So in other words, I couldn't go out and hire you and train you. I'd have to look for somebody that already had the license, already had the expertise, and hire that person and merge into.
Let me follow up on that. So in Community A, where before the bank gets involved, there are 5 independent broker businesses, hypothetically, 5 different broker offices. When the bank got in, there'd still be 5.
Mm-hmm.
You'd acquire one of those 5.
One of those 5 or maybe more.
And if you can't, I guess you can't get in.
Can't get into the business.
Okay.
That's the whole point.
Let me get to another issue that I would bet you have an opinion on. If I go to a Walmart, there's a bank in there, and I would assume those banks are members of your association.
They are.
Chances are. Okay, now what I've heard though is that Walmart wants to be like their own bank and have their own bank in their own store. Is that something that you all think is a good idea or not a good idea?
We think it's not a good idea, and let me explain how it works today. If you go into a Walmart in Oklahoma City or Tulsa or any place, and you see a branch location of a bank there, it could be Arvest, it could be City National, it could be First National Bank, doesn't matter. They all rent space from Walmart and offer their services through a retail rental agreement. It's just like any other tenant. And Walmart gets paid by leasing the space. Mm-hmm. What Walmart is proposing to do is create its own bank. And why banks across the country, not just in Oklahoma, are opposed to that, and incidentally so are realtors and insurance people, is because in this country we have always had the position that putting a commercial firm and a financial services firm together is a bad result. In Walmart's case, think about how big Walmart is. Last year, I think they generated over $300 billion in sales. That's more than 6 times the total capital of all the banks in Oklahoma. That's a staggering figure. And somebody of that size can dominate the payment system. If something goes wrong with that large producer, and the payment system, everybody is in chaos. The payment system is the mechanism through which banks close and open business transactions, and money is moved across the country and literally around the globe. If one entity is so large that it dominates that system and something goes wrong, everybody is going to be adversely affected by it.
Let me ask another hypothetical to see if I'm understanding you correctly. If you walk in today to a Walmart and there's an Arvest location there and you arrange for a loan, you're borrowing money from Arvest.
Correct.
Under the proposed system with Walmart, if you'd walk into the same location and you borrowed money, you'd be borrowing Walmart's money.
That's correct.
And they'd be supervising it.
That's correct. That's correct.
Is that system in place anywhere in the country?
No. It's not. Well, I say no. There are some firms, General Motors has a credit corporation that's styled much like this one is. Target has one, it's called an industrial loan company. And it's not technically a commercial bank, but it's insured. Its deposits are insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Those entities have never made any pretense about trying to get into the banking business. What they're trying to do are things that are different. We oppose those applications as well, and the FDIC saw fit to do otherwise. Walmart is a bit of a different animal because of its size and dominance, and frankly, its history in smaller communities. We've seen what Walmart has done for consumers, or to consumers in many instances. They've become the only provider, and once you get rid of all of your competition, the world is open to you to charge whatever you want.
Somehow we have run out of time.
I'm
Roger,
sorry.
Thanks very much for coming on The Verdict. I can't believe how quickly our time went. And we have to have you back on another show in the future.
I'd look forward to it.
Stay in touch. We want you back.
Thank you very much.
Roger Beverage at the Oklahoma Bankers Association. Kent and I will be back with a final word after this.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
you guys said I'd save with Cox Digital Telephone. Well, my bill came and... Could this be right?
You may be surprised how much you save with Cox Digital Telephone. That's why over 1.5 million people have switched.
So this really is a total? Lovely. Because I think I found a good use for the savings.
With Cox, there's no waiting for the other shoe to drop. The only surprise is there's no surprise at all.
Not sure where you're headed? NATS can help you find your way. It's the National Athletic Testing System. We call it NATS. You'll call it your launching pad to success. NATS will give you a standardized evaluation that will help you measure your performance and give that information to college coaches so they can accurately evaluate your potential. NATS also helps with academic support. Join with the Oklahoma High School Football Coaches Association and head for success at www.nats.us.
We are back on The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We've been listening to Roger Beverage of the Oklahoma Bankers Association tell us about all the things that are going on. What a interesting business right now. There's just so many different issues, and it's not, I guess, a little bit volatile, but more than anything else, just things pertinent. It's so a part of all of our lives.
Well, the bankers are on the cutting edge of what's going on in the financial world, of course, and have been for forever, I suppose, but there's so many more things going on. Getting into a checkless society, a paperless society with debit cards and all sorts of electronic transmissions of funds, and now the banks are in the insurance business and going to try to get into the real estate brokerage business. People are trying to get into the banking business.
Yeah, bankers' hours are 24/7 these days.
They are indeed. They are indeed. By the way, just a little side note about Roger Beverage. Those of you that are native Oklahomans, at least have been here since the early 80s, know what a period of bank failures and all we had from Penn Square Bank going down in July 5, 1982. Continuing on up until the late 80s. Roger came from Nebraska into Oklahoma when the banking industry was at its lowest point. And through a lot of hard work on his behalf, as well as the bankers around the state, they have recovered and are in really good shape now, in no small part due to Roger Beverage.
Thanks, Kent. We'll be back with another show next week. Stay with us on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.